All right, testing 1, 2, 3. Is anybody out there? Let's see if we got people. Sorry for the late start. I got distracted by the Merrick Garland making a speech. I bet the Republicans are really sorry now that they left him sitting around with nothing else to do. Now he's the Attorney General. Oh my God, you can't trip this guy up. He knows exactly what everything is. Oh, it's so great. So anyway, they were talking about, I'm assuming people can hear me, of course. They were talking about the raid and that they're going to release the warrant information and some other stuff. And Garland was saying how he's not going to stand by and let Trump disparage the FBI and so on and so forth. And it was all done 100% properly according to procedure. And he had plenty of notification and was given like 50 chances to turn over documents. And they finally just got exasperated, especially when they realized that he was in possession of lists of people who were spies and things like that that could be dangerous. So craziness, madness. All right, let's see if you guys can see the screen. And what's going on? Oh no, the market's falling. We were doing so good. What happened? We got rejected right where we didn't want to get rejected. Oh, rejected right at 12,000. That's so sad. Oh, the horror. Look at that dollar. Oh, 111. Oh my God, no wonder. Oh, what a catastrophe. Oh, our dollars are so valuable. That's terrible. You see, it's terrible. It's not really terrible, but I mean, it's, you know, people are freaking out because the Fortune 500 companies make so much of their money overseas. You know, and when you look at the dollar, when you look at the dollar, well, I had a chart this morning. It was much better. Where are we? Oh, yeah. Where are we? We're on PhilStockWorld. Let's see. And I'm Phil. That's perfect. All right. So, nope. Wait. Oh, it was in chat. Dollar. I swear I had a great big chart of the dollar. There it is. All right. So, first of all, let's remember this was the greatest stock market run in history, and the dollar was at 120. All right. So a strong dollar does not harm the economy. A strong dollar does not cause it does not cause the market to drop. Okay, stocks are perfectly fine with a strong dollar. That's not the issue. The issue is that as the dollar rises, the stocks tend to get repriced because they are priced in dollars. Okay, it's, you know, just the way it works. A stock is something you buy with the dollar. So if the dollar is stronger, the price of the stock goes down a bit. The price in dollars of the stock. If you look at the price of the stock in euros, it goes up. See, that's an interesting thing, right? Because in euros, you know, a stock is at 100, right? $100, and the dollar goes up 10%. Well, the stock goes to $90 because now this dollar is stronger, and you only need 90 of them to buy the same stock. The stock didn't lose value; the dollar gained value. I know that's a really tough thing to get your head around, but that's the situation. Now, there's other factors come into it. Does the stock earn their money in dollars? Because now the dollars that they earn have become more valuable, right? And if they buy, so where do they pay their laborers? Do they pay their laborers? I was just told we have this project going on in Thailand. And in Thailand, the average person makes $9 a day or $10 a day. So we're paying them $25 a day, and they're freaking, you know, they're thrilled with it. The government's thrilled with it. Everybody's happy about the project we're doing. So because we're paying $25 a day. Now in America, that's insane, $25 a day. In Thailand, they consider that a huge amount of money. And the cost of living in Thailand is incredibly cheap. It's just really fun. It's a really good place to hang out. Everything is just like, you can't believe the price. Every time you buy anything there, you're like, what? Really? But and it's all relative, right? Because we're walking around with dollars, so we think everything is great. If they come here on vacation, they can't even believe that people can live, because where would you get this kind of money? They don't come here on vacation. You don't see a lot of people from Thailand, rich people, but you don't see a lot of regular people from Thailand picking America for vacation because it's unaffordable. It's just impossible for them to conceive of like going to a country where a hotel room costs $200 a night. That's like their rent for a month. So it's not the kind of thing you would do. Would you go on a vacation where a place is like a hotel's $3,000 a night? No. You would choose to go somewhere else. That's what it looks like to them. So it's all relative. It depends where you earn your money and where you spend your money. So, and that goes for companies. So where do they pay for their labor? So where does the money come from? What currency are they getting paid in? Where do they pay their workers? If I pay my workers in Thailand, then my strong dollar is in my favor. If I'm paying, because I'm not paying them $25, really, I'm paying them, 75,000 baht. See, it sounds good it's 30, right? So 30 times 70 times 25, not 75,000. 30 times 25 is 750. So paying up, I was thinking about the quarterly salaries from the chart we had. Anyway, so we're paying them 750 baht per day. Now, if the dollar gets stronger, if it gets 10% stronger, I'm going to pay them 680 baht per day. So if the dollar is weaker, we pay them more. So that it's all a factor. Then that goes for the goods and services too. What is my product made out of? Apple's buying all their shit in China, so the strong dollar is actually good for Apple. Okay, they get paid. In other words, they sell a lot more phones in America than they do in China. That's not their principal market. Their principal market is still America. Apple gets a tremendous amount of income from the US. They get also money from Europe, so it matters what's happening with the euro. But the point is they're buying their stuff in China, and if the yuan is weaker against the dollar, then Apple is buying their stuff for less money than they started out the year at. So it depends on so many things, right? And there's that goes for beef producers and where your agricultural stuff comes from. If you're restaurants, where you're getting your food sourced, who you're getting things from. There's a lot of cross-current factors. So there's no way to say, oh, the dollar is rising, therefore this, therefore that. But the point is, we had a crash in 2001, right? Here's 9/11, and then everything sort of slid. So the market slid anyway. The dollar slid too. Part of the reason the dollar slid though is because we kept doing stuff trying to like boost the economy, and that stuff was dilutive to the dollar. You put more dollars into circulation, you're diluting the dollar. If you lower rates, you're making dollars more readily available. They multiply in the marketplace, and and the banks loan them out and so on and so forth. You have liquidity. There's less demand for dollars eventually. Also, if there's a weakness to the U.S. economy, if we start deficit spending on a large scale, those are the kind of things that cause the dollar to be weaker. But by default, the dollar is about 60% of the global currencies. 60% of the world's currency is dollars. 30% is euros, and 10% is maybe everything else. And everything else would really be the Chinese yuan, the British pound, the Japanese yen. Those countries that you think in your mind are like big currencies are not. They're inside of 10% that goes with everything else. And the Swiss franc, they're all inside of that 10%. US 60%, maybe 65%, frankly. The euro about 30%, leaving less than 10% for every other currency you've ever heard of. And that's why it's very hard, for the Saudis want to, not get off the dollar standard. It's very, very hard. And of course they do, because the Saudis are getting less dollars for their oil. But on the other hand, though, they do get dollars. They trade oil for dollars. So because of that, they like having all these dollars. That's the strongest currency in the world. You want to get paid in the strongest currency in the world. It's just a little annoying when you're getting a flat exchange and it doesn't work out in your favor. Most commodities are priced in dollars worldwide, and it really, really hurts these other countries. And that's one of the reasons we have bad, much as we're complaining about our inflation, it's worse in other countries because, you know, we have a strong currency. It's diluting the inflationary effect. This is up 20 points. That is 20, basically it's more than 20%. It's 20% since Biden took office in 2021. So we are now at and right this minute, that's not even accurate because we just peaked over 111, right? Where are we? See, 111. So we're now over 111, and now the chart people are like, oh my God, because this thing's getting out of control. We are now here. And we didn't even, here's the 110 line. We didn't even consolidate at 110. We're popping through 110. We're like, screw 110. We're going to 115 before we even think about consolidating. But most likely, this isn't going to really stop until we're at 120, especially because the Fed, our Fed, is leading all the other central banks in tightening. And not all the central banks. Turkey's like 20%, interest. Argentina's at some crazy number, like 30% or something like that. Other countries have high interest rates, but it doesn't matter because their currencies are completely irrelevant. Nobody wants them anyway. Who cares what they pay in interest? Nobody wants to be in that kind of currency. But the dollar, everybody wants to be in dollars. Everybody desires to have dollars. Everybody, and I'm talking about everybody. I'm talking about the Iranians. I'm talking about, the Chinese will sit there and talk about how bad capitalism is and what's wrong with America. But meanwhile, they've got billions and billions of dollars in cash. It ain't that bad. So there's a huge demand for dollars. If you're converting, you're converting oil for dollars, you're converting gold for dollars, so on and so forth, everything converts back to dollars. And the dollar is now paying a substantially higher rate. You can get 4% now for a 2-year note. It's actually the same. It's pretty flat across the board. It's 2% it's 4% for 3 years and for 2 years and 10 years and 5 years and 30 years. Everything's basically 4% right now. That's bad. That's what they call it's getting to a point of what they call inversion, which is bad. You don't want theoretically long-term rates should be lower than short-term rates. No, I'm sorry. Wait, it's long-term inverted. Your current borrowing cost. No, it's I'm sorry. I mean, the short-term rates are higher. That's bad. So the short-term rates are higher means that longer term, it means currently you're short of dollars. That's what it means, and that's where we are. So the 2 years are picking up alarmingly, and we have that too. We have a chart for that. Look at that on a monthly basis. So the bond market has collapsed. That's 180 to 130. That's 50 out of 180. Okay, 140 to 113 is 25. 25 here, here's 25 to 108. That's down 17 points, like 15%. Look at the 2-year though. This is where you're getting the inversion, right? Because the 2 years dropping faster than anything. 110 to 103. It is collapsing really fast, and it should be lower than the longer term rates. And it's not. It's actually creeping up and catching up. And what does that mean? That means that right now, in the current situation, it's very hard to get a hold of dollars. So why do the notes lose value? Because the notes were written at a lower interest rate, and if rates are going up relative to them, the notes lose value, and rates are going up so fast that this is happening. And it's the Fed. But look where we are now, and look what's going to happen. He's going to now. This is a raise. Let's go to here. This is a raise of 2%, right? They got another 2% ahead of them. So yeah, we're going to go back to this is going to go down below 100. This will go to 100 too. The 5-year is going to go to 100. These are some scary numbers. The bond market is in free fall. All right, so And you know, people put money in bonds, they think it's safe. But the reason it's not safe is you know, you have a 10-year bond and you're getting 3%, right? So over the course of 10 years, you're going to get 30% interest basically on the money you put in. And the way a bond works is you pay, I'm simplifying, you pay $70 for a $100 bond. And the interest is, so at the end of 10 years, you'll get $100, right? You guys know that. You've gotten savings bonds from, you know, if you got something when you were a kid, you graduated or something like that, or had a bar mitzvah, you get some people give you savings bonds because it's that way they get to give you something that says 100, but they only spent $68 on it, you know, something like that. and it's like, yeah, in 30 years, this will be $100. Have a good day. And you look at the thing, you're like, what am I supposed to do with this? It's like, it says it's $100, but it's not $100, and you can't do anything with it. It's annoying. I always give cash. I think kids love it when you give them a $100 bill. They're so happy. Anyway, so you have this coupon that's currently worth $70. If you want to cash it now, it's only worth $70. If you wait 30 years, it'll be worth $100 because it'll accumulate 3% interest over 30 years. The problem is, though, the expectation of inflation over those 30 years. And also, if a new bond is issued at 5%, right? That means it's going to give you 50%, a 50% increase. And it wouldn't be 30% because you'd be paying whatever 1/3 of something, 1/3 of 75. Oh yeah, 1/3 of 75, right? So it would be 75 at 3%, right? Roughly this compounding and stuff. But let's say it's $75 at 3%. Okay, so if you have 75 now and you get 3% a year for 30 years, 30% of 75 is obviously 25, and there you go. That's $100. So the bond is a $100 bond, costs you $75 on day one. Now, and if it's a 2-year, it would cost you 6% less. So it would cost you $94, right? Because then you get 3% for 2 years. Same thing. So that's how they sell the bonds. So here's the thing, though. If you have 5% interest, if rates go from 3% to 5%, what happens to your bond? Well, now you're going to get 50% over 10 years, and that means 66, right? So that means now it's 66.6 is going to be what you pay because you're going to get a 50% bump on that, and you'll be at 100. So one guy's got a bond he paid $75 for. This guy's got a bond he paid $66 for. So what happened to your $75 bond? It's now worth $66. It's worth the current rate. And no matter where you are as far as how many years, you're going to take that kind of hit to your remaining value. So that's what happens when rates go up 2%, is the bond market loses, you know, roughly 13%, whatever it works out to. So now, but we're not done at 2%. We're going to go to 4% at least. So what's going to happen is the bond market's going to lose about 1/3 of its total value, and the bond market is humongous. It's much bigger than the stock market. And this money is just gone. This is money people put away that they thought was safe and they thought they would get it. So when they redeem their bond, instead of getting, because their bond is only worth $66, right? And soon it'll be worth whatever less, you know, another 75 to 66 is 9, so 9 more minus is 57. So basically their bond is worth not much more than half of what they thought it was going to be. And then they're still getting their crappy little 3% interest or whatever they're getting on the note, while other people are getting 5, 6, 8% interest. Meanwhile, inflation is devaluing the money that they're holding. You know, look, I've been telling you guys for years the bond market was an insane place to put money because this had to happen. There was no way this wasn't going to happen. You can't sustain 0% rates forever. You can't just give away money. That's why we have a $32 trillion deficit. We've been giving money away for 20 years. And you know what? It doesn't really work because it doesn't build you a sustainable economy. That's the problem, okay? Giving money away, especially when you give it to rich people and expect it to trickle down, is idiotic, okay? The way you build a sustainable economy with long-term investments is to do what Roosevelt did, which is build roads and bridges and dams and power companies. You know, Hoover Dam is still there. It's still making electricity, okay? Long Island is still there. It's now, you know, it was probably, you know, the GDP of Long Island is probably massive. You know, it was an investment though. They took an island off New York that people, you know, that people would vacation on, and they said, okay, let's turn this into a sub-city of New York. Let's make Long Island into something. That was an investment. That was, they were, you know, and it was a make work project. It wasn't necessary. It was kind of like what China does with their entire economy. It wasn't necessary. China doesn't need to have all these cities and all these airports and all these rail lines, but they built it because at least, you know, it's something for the future. Things will develop over time, and there's no doubt that China will eventually reap the rewards of having this incredible high-speed rail system and all these airports and blah, blah, blah. Of course, that's good. But it's infrastructure investments, you know, and so by investing in roads and electricity and so on and so forth, you have things that last. And by lasting, I mean, it's 100 freaking years later, and we still are reaping the benefits of projects that were done in the Great Depression to create jobs and boost the economy. That's the way you create jobs and boost the economy, by building things that actually last. We don't do that. We do stupid shit with money. We give money to corporations and let them buy back their stock. Who does that benefit? It benefits the shareholders. The shareholders are the top 1% of the people in the country. It's giving money to rich people. Either way you look at it, you're giving money to rich people. And corporations buy out other corporations, and they decrease competition, and they get larger, and they charge the consumers more, and so on and so forth. And it drives inflation. None of these are good things. If you want to, so that's what's happening now. We've done this idiotic policy for 20 years, and all we've gotten out of it really was just fluff. You know, we got a bunch of overpriced, overvalued stocks that are in the stratosphere based on a bullshit premise that money is free forever, and you can borrow hundreds of billions of dollars and not worry about it. You know, companies didn't, you know, companies that were the way the debt is in this country, the way companies are like in debt for more than the value of the company, more than their market cap. These companies are in debt. That used to be an automatic bankruptcy. It's like, well, you can't possibly live. And people would have stopped lending you money a long time ago. That doesn't happen anymore. They get to borrow and borrow and borrow, because when your interest rate is zero, well, why not borrow more? You need more money, borrow more money. Does it affect your books? No, it doesn't affect your books, because we're in fantasy land, aren't we? Okay, so in other words, if interest rates are not zero, but let's say 1%, right? And I'm a $100 billion company, I borrowed $10 billion at 1%, then I'm paying $100 million a year in interest. Okay, but I don't make $100 million. I don't make any money. I take the $10 billion. Now, in good faith, I take my $10 billion and I say, well, I'm bound to do something that can make $100 million so I can pay off my, and you're not paying off your debt, you're paying off the interest, right? But I'm going to make my interest payments on when I borrow $10 billion. You know, I got to be able to do something that makes $100 million. Well, surprisingly, people don't. They take $10 billion, they spend it, and nothing happens. So what's the solution? Oh, get another $10 billion. It's only going to make me, now I only have $200 million a year in payments. I'm bound to find something that makes $200 million with $10 billion. And you keep doing that until you get to the point where people just finally go, no, you can't do that. You owe $1 billion a year now. You're borrowing $10 billion again. It doesn't make any sense. And that's at 1% interest. God forbid interest goes up to 5% like it is now. And suddenly you're $1 billion a year is $5 billion a year, and your company meanwhile didn't make money in the first place. And now you're basically going to go bankrupt. And that's why in Greece everything fell apart really hard and fast, because as soon as rates started ticking up, all these debts and all this bullshit on the books of all these companies was suddenly stripped away. And you say, well, now they can't pay back this money. Now the government can't pay back this money. Nobody can pay back this money. Nobody can fund these pension plans. None of this shit is going to happen. All the projections and everything you said. And we've had 10 years of free money. 20 years of free money. There are people who are 40 years old working in investment banks and working as investment counselors and financial planners and stuff like that. 40-year-old people who have never dealt with inflation in their lives, who have never dealt with real interest rates, who every single thing they know and have learned since they've been in business has been based on money is effectively free. And those are people running companies, and those are people who are out there making business decisions, those are politicians. People who are below 40 have absolutely no idea how to deal with this economy. And this is why people are freaking out. Okay, older people like me who've been in this, who lived through the 70s and 80s, this seems kind of normal to me, because this is what I grew up with. What I was talking about this morning, okay? This is what I grew up with. 10% inflation, sure, that's normal. Things go up 10% a year. When I was, oh God, how old was I? Must have been, I couldn't even tell you. I don't know, I guess I was in second grade. How old are you in second grade? Like 8? I think I was 8. So it must have been 1971-ish. So I had a girlfriend, and I would get my allowance on Wednesdays, and so I got 50 cents. And we used to go to the malt shop, which was a pharmacy. So the pharmacy with a counter. We went to the malt shop, and we would get a chocolate malted that we would share, and that was 12 cents. And she would get a $100,000 bar, and I would get M&Ms. Those were our favorites. And with the extra penny, we would get some gum. They never left a tip. Never thought about that. But that was our date every Saturday. I'd blow half my money on a date every Wednesday, and then I'd take the other 25 cents. I had enough money to buy. I would buy an ice cream sundae at Carvel on the weekend. I would always get an ice cream sundae at Carvel on the weekend, and that was less than a quarter. I don't remember how much it was exactly, but it was my quarter totally covered it. So, and when I went to college, wings were 10 cents, right? Chicken wings are like $1 something now. In college they were 10 cents. So you buy, how many wings you want? You want 50 wings? $5. Okay, we can do that. And I think a bucket of beer was $5 too, so it worked out great. So yeah, we were aware prices went up, there was inflation, but you know what? When you got a job, you would get paid, and next year you get 10% more, and the next year you get 10% more, and then you get a promotion and you get some more money, and you would get another, and eventually you get another job and get a great big jump in salary. You were never worried about inflation because you just made more money. It'd get that way. You may go through a period where you like suddenly say, oh, I can't afford this, I can't afford that. I better get another job. I better do something else and make more money. And obviously not everybody had it so easy, but I'm just saying that conceptually, it wasn't an endemic thing. I mean, look, this, right? You know that you have a lot of friends who are struggling right now. You know a lot of people, friends, family, whatever, that are really struggling right now in this economy and have huge problems making payments and so on and so forth. That wasn't true in the 70s. My parents went bankrupt in the early 70s. So there was a bad recession then, But my dad got another job, my mom got a job, and they worked their way out of it, blah, 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 whatever. So things were tough, but they weren't so tough that you couldn't get out of it. Now, things are at a point where I don't think people see any way out of where they are. I think that we are the wages are so desperately behind the inflation, because there wasn't no inflation, but wages have been so stagnant for so long that people have just fallen way behind. And then this sudden jolt of inflation has really, really hurt. So, when you're even and then you get a jolt of inflation, it hurts, but you can recover. But when you were already way behind and struggling, and then this happens, it's a disaster. And the companies are fighting back so hard against wages. The Fed is fighting back so hard against wages, because once you get into that wage cycle, where is this? I just did this. Oh, because where was that? Yeah. Okay, so once you get into the wage cycle, here's the consumer price index and the Fed funds rate, but more importantly, the consumer price index. So this is what happened. Recession in the 70s. My parents go bankrupt somewhere around here, okay? But everything was getting cheaper. Everything wasn't getting more expensive. Everything got kind of cheap. So a lot of people were hurting, but if you get a job, you hold on, whatever, boom, then things got better. As things got better, though, things got more expensive again. As soon as people have money, things get more expensive, right? They start buying stuff. Went up, went back down. This is only the mid 70s, right? That's that 70s show time of year, right? That kind of period. And then we then it was that we had the whole Watergate thing. Nixon took us here. Nixon took us off the gold standard. That's what happened here. That caused inflation to spike up. The dollar got much weaker. Then we had a double dip sort of recession, and then we started having major. Ford came in with the whip inflation now stuff, and Carter got blamed for inflation, which is ridiculous because it's all part of this cycle. And then rates were crazy. Then Reagan came in, and Volcker started tightening like crazy, and the Fed funds rate, the red, went from here to here, 5 to 20. But let's keep in mind that 2.5%, 3% rates are normal this whole time. So we were a bit below normal here. Then we were normal-ish in the 70s and 80s. And then all of a sudden, though, in order to get on top of this inflation that was spiking and coming up again, they had to raise rates to 20% before it calmed down. And that's a sustained amount of time. This is 1980. This is like 1982 at least. That's a couple of years of 15+% inflation. You could get a tax-free municipal bond that would pay you like 10 or 12%. Tax-free. And that's actually, if you want, that's something that's worth looking at these days. It's a real powerful thing when you have a tax-free municipal bond, because you're making the interest, you're not paying any tax on it. You get that for like, you can get those for 30 years. So screw treasury bills. But the problem is, will the municipality survive? That's where you got to be careful. So you really have to, you can't just buy a municipal bond. You have to actually think about like who are you investing in? What municipality is giving you money? But then, these high rates were around for another decade. 10%, basically 10% interest was normal. So in the 80s, when I got out of college, when I got a car, it was like, my loan rate on my first car was something like 9% or something like that. And that was incentivized 9%, my first car loan. And now my student loans were in the 10% range of interest. So I paid those off as fast as I could. because that was hurtful. You know, people are borrowing now. People complain about their student loans now, but the rates are like so much lower. I'm like, holy shit. But of course, but it all goes together, because if it wasn't for the low rates, nobody would pay $75,000 a semester for college. They are insane. That is completely insane. Your college, and that's a top school, but let's say a normal college is still paying like $50,000 to go to like a regular school or a mid-level college these days. $50,000. So that means they're taking $200,000 up front to start your life. So you are being put $200,000 in debt to begin your life. So it's like that's like in the game of life. If you like spin the wheel at the first spin and it says pay $200,000 right away, it's crazy. You're not even out of the gate. You haven't earned any money yet. You haven't done anything, and you've got a $200,000 bill to start you off. And then they kick you out the door at college and say, hey, go put money on a house, go put money down on an apartment, buy furniture, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so debt. You can't possibly, where is this money going to come from? You can't afford it. You have to go out and buy furniture, get an apartment, start paying utility bills. Now you're paying your own stuff. So immediately, unless you have a fantastic job with great money, how are you going to be on top of things for ages? You know, and this is why people get married later and later and later and end up not having children. Okay, these are the decisions society makes and the consequences of those decisions. People can't even afford to live, let alone get married and start with all this bullshit and start having kids, and kids cost $1 million now, right? I think that was the number. Cost of raising a child to 18. This is pre-college. Oh, maybe that includes college. Oh no, only 300,000. Sorry. So middle-class parents spend $300,000 by the time the child turns 18, 17. That's from 2015, so it's gone up a bit, but not as much as I thought. So apparently the last time they did the study was $300-something thousand. So you're going to spend, divided by 15, you're going to spend $20,000 a year per kid. Where the hell is that going to come from? So you get married, you got to, and it's not like people do the math, but the reality is somewhere you're doing the math, right? I mean, you're thinking about your future, and you're like, okay, I get married, I got to now buy a house and come up with a deposit for the house and make my payments on the house. And then there's going to be a $20,000 a year kid number one and $20,000 a year kid number two. It's insane. We have an insane society. This is why Thailand is so great. They don't have any of this shit. And and healthcare, of course, you got to pay your healthcare. That's like a thing that has to be paid no matter what. And now these days, and I was talking about that last week, we got phone bills we never used to have, right? Now it costs you $100 per person in your family to have a phone. My father used to complain about a $3.99 phone line in the bedroom, and now it costs $3.99 a month. So now it goes $100 a month for each person to have a phone. That's, you know, between the plan and the phone fees. And then you need cable, otherwise the phone doesn't work anyway. It barely works. So you need internet. Then now you got to pay for your TV. You got to pay like 5 different people to watch TV now. What are we doing? And then you wonder why the economy is bad. It's like, why won't people buy my stuff? You know, like, why aren't people going to IKEA? Why aren't people going? You know, why aren't people going to the movies? It's like, with what? And of course, the solution to this is not raising rates, it's raising wages. But the Fed's not looking to solve that problem. They're looking to solve the problem of corporate costs because, again, because their customers, their people are the S&P 500. They're people of the bankers. You know, the Fed is bankers. The bankers don't give a shit about you. They give a shit about the people who are borrowing hundreds of billions of dollars. And those people get their money from not just America. We're only 5% of the world's population. They get their money from overseas. And so they want lower wages in the US. They want lower paid workers. So they don't want inflation cycle. They don't want rising wages. They don't want to deal with it. And again, all the younger managers have never dealt with it. They've got no concept of what this all is. So they think it's like horrific when the workers come to them and ask them for a 10% wage increase to keep up with inflation. They're like, what are you, nuts? But, you know, as I said about Starbucks, we did the math on Starbucks this week. And if Starbucks has, what was the number? If Starbucks has to pay their people $22 an hour in California, it was going to cost, that's what it was. I forget, I'm not going to do the math. If Starbucks has to pay people in California $22 an hour, it's going to cost 15 cents a cup more for your coffee. So is that a deal breaker? Understand, though, that means that the person working behind the counter at Starbucks is going to make $22 an hour, which is, oh, there's a calculator right there. So they're going to make $22 an hour times 40 hours a week. They're going to make $880 a week times 52 weeks. They're going to make $40,000 bucks. So you're going to, and this will go, this is a rule in California that's going for all large-scale restaurants. Any restaurants that have more than 100 locations will have this rule, and it'll be $22 an hour minimum. So, and it's just the first state to address it, though. This is where we need to get to make to have a job where there's dignity, to say to people this, you know, that your job, you know, this is step one towards moving everything that way, because that's what you need to live. Now, the person who was making $15 an hour times 40 times 52. So the person who was making 31,200, who will now be making 48,000, will have to pay 15 cents more when they want to buy a cup of coffee, or 10 cents more for toilet paper at Walmart, and so on and so forth. So will it be, it's not entirely a benefit to them. Costs will rise, but not enough that you shouldn't do it. Everybody has more money. These people who have $17,000 more to spend than they're living on now will be able to afford to buy more cars and couches and go on vacation and have a life, kind of stuff, instead of going home and curling up with their watching TV on the phone because it's all they can afford, kind of stuff. So, you know, regardless of how you feel about that, there's nothing terrible about giving people more money, right? Raising wages is how you really grow the GDP. When all the people make more money, it's better for the economy. And the problem is also when Bill Gates makes another $10 billion a year, who does that benefit? It doesn't even benefit Bill Gates. He's not going to change his lifestyle. Bill Gates doesn't look at his earnings for the year and say, oh, $10 billion, holy shit, now I can buy that TV. It's not like he's already got everything he wants. He's not spending more money. Rich people take their money and mostly they will invest it or put it away or do something, something like that. They will also buy more and more houses, which then creates a much higher price for your house because they're competing for the land. There's only X amount of land. There's only X amount of beaches, right? Only so much beachfront property or whatever, or the best property in your neighborhoods or in your towns. And the rich people buy it, right? And they compete to buy that, and they leave the scraps for everybody else. And that's because instead of them paying their workers a realistic wage, they have massive corporate profits. Now, The problem with adjusting wages, though, if we actually do start paying the workers the correct amount of money, and we will have to eventually, is corporate profits will be very uneven and they will go up and down in fits and starts, because Starbucks, here you go. Starbucks, and this is the entire international company, only makes $3 billion. Funny how much you talk about Starbucks and they only make $3 billion. It's like a joke. It's like Apple makes that in a week. You think it's again, it goes to equivalency though. It's hard to get your head around some of these numbers. It's like you talk about companies that have great recognition and it's top-notch companies and blah blah, and you think of Starbucks and you're like, oh, Starbucks, yeah. It's like they only make $3 billion a whole year. They sell 122. I'm sorry. Wait, 32 billion. Sorry, not 120. They sell $32 billion worth of coffee and whatever crap, and they only make $3 billion. You draw 10% to the bottom line. It's not a big company on the whole. Now, if you start paying all these workers all this money and they don't raise their prices, it's going to take away half their profits, and that's just in California. So just California can take half their profits. So they have to raise the price of the coffee. There's no choice. But it doesn't hurt anybody. That doesn't hurt anybody because and that's the bullshit of the whole thing. It's that you're so underpaying the workers, and it really is. It's not about your bottom line, because you could raise your prices, and of course, if you raise your prices, you might have a little bit less sales, and on the whole, you might make a little bit less money. But in reality, you're so much better off paying the workers enough money so that they can buy things. Because I'll tell you something, a $30,000 Starbucks worker cannot afford to go to Starbucks and buy coffee. I'm sure they drink it for free. I hope they drink it for free. Good God, could you imagine they don't let them drink the coffee? I have no idea how Starbucks works, but that would be sad. Considering how much they dump out while you watch. You ever watch them make the coffee at Starbucks? They're like dumping half of the stuff they make. It's like they have extra this, they have extra that. So they're constantly pouring stuff on the drain. And I'm just like, I'm always watching that going, wow, really? This is their operation? Like there's so much food waste. It's incredible. I mean, you know, for every Starbucks that we have, there could be, 10 coffee shops in Ethiopia giving everybody as much coffee as they want, especially since the coffee comes from there anyway. Just the waste, just what's left over. Because normal people, when they make coffee, don't like take fresh grounds every time and use a massive, like a cup size amount of coffee, right? Like they're like a whole giant coffee cube. And I have the Nespresso, right? And it's got those little pods, and it's fine. Those are fine. That makes a proper amount of coffee. It's not even 1/5 the size of what they put in Starbucks. I mean, I feel the weight of that thing. It's nothing. These guys in Starbucks, they take that big wide cup, that big wide metal thing, and they pack it full of coffee. And then they make one cup. They take that whole thing, they make one cup, or basically one shot of espresso comes out of that thing, and then they and then they throw it out. That's it. Boom, done. Next. It's crazy. And maybe it tastes better. I mean, I'm not a huge Starbucks fan, frankly, but maybe it tastes better. But does it taste enough better that people should suffer? Does it taste enough better that we should be? That's the other thing, is like getting people used to things that make no sense. To say your coffee has to taste like this. And God bless them, Starbucks invented that, right? I mean, they basically got people, or maybe Dunkin' Donuts invented it, frankly. But they tried to elevate the concept of coffee. People were perfectly happy with whatever shit got put in a coffee machine at home, right? Whatever you put in a coffee machine at home, you make a pot, or in the office, you make a pot of coffee, and people would say, oh, that's good coffee, or that's terrible coffee, or whatever. But that was coffee. Good, bad, or indifferent. you know, and the funny thing is, it's not even the coffee in Starbucks that makes it. It's the fact that they mix it with a million things and give it these different flavors. That's what it is. And the most popular thing at Starbucks now, they sell more cold coffee than hot coffee now. All those cold coffee drinks have become more popular than the hot drinks. So anyway, point is, we're in a cycle, and wages are so far behind that the Fed is just doing the wrong thing, completely wrong thing. And all they're doing is exacerbating the cycle. It's going to take longer, you know, and it's not helping anybody. Raising the rates is very dangerous for all the borrowed money that we have out there needs to be addressed, and it's not going to be addressed. It's going to snap because of the way they're raising rates so fast. And that's happening in 2 minutes. So we'll see what happens. See if we have any questions. Nope. Okay, great. I must be doing fantastic. Fed. The Fed. There we go. The Fed. So we are waiting for their rate decision that'll come out here in a minute. Meanwhile, the petroleum status report came out this morning, and we had another build. And how is oil doing? Oil. There you go. Oh, struggling around 83.50 range. Well, markets are picking back up into the Fed. Everybody's very excited because what can he possibly say? What can he say that's going to be so bad? Petroleum status. September 16th. That sounds right. Oh, look how small that is. Plus. Good. Okay. So what happened? Oil inventory is 1.1 million. Gasoline up by 1.6 million, and diesel up by 1.2 million. Terrible when it's like a build across the board like that. Fuel production. Look at this. See, this is interesting, right? Last year, distillate fuels, they were producing 4.4. Now it's 5. A lot more distillate than last year. Gasoline, we're producing about the same as last year. Refinery capacity, whoa, look at that, way up. Now it's kind of weird because the refinery capacity is up, but we're not actually producing more stuff. Last year we produced 20.21 million barrels. Now we're producing 19.5. That's 600,000. No. What am I talking about? That's 1.4 million barrels less per day than last year. So we're producing 1.4 million barrels less product than we were last year. That's an interesting concept, right? So even though we're producing 1.4 million less per day, which is, math people, 7 times 1.4, 9.8, 10 million barrels a week less oil is being produced than last year, and we still have a build. High prices cause demand to go down. And demand is more flexible than people think, and the demand destruction is more permanent than people think, because for example, you used to drive to work by yourself, and now gas is so expensive that you carpool with your friend. When gas prices come down, do you stop carpooling with your friend, or that just becomes your new habit, right? While gas prices are high, people decide they got to get a higher mileage car. The practicality of having a higher mileage car offsets the rise in gas prices. When prices come down, you still have your higher mileage car and use less gas. Not to mention, obviously, people going to electric cars and whatever. Gas prices were so high, Joe Biden passes a gas tax bill. Not a gas tax bill, I'm sorry, a bill to push electric cars and so on and so forth. That's a permanent change in our consumption going forward. All right. People who were taking a car, take a bus, it doesn't take a lot of people to change their habits to really eat into the consumption. And it doesn't go back quickly because people are still wary that the prices can go back up. That happened for the last time we had a spike in gas prices. was it 2008, 2007, whatever it was. We were literally like every single person in America basically had an SUV for a while. There was a period where like everybody had a big truck or an SUV or whatever, and anybody with a small car was about to die on the highway. That's effectively where we were before that gas crisis. Then gas went to like $4 plus in places, and all of a sudden everybody said, "Oh, that wasn't a very good idea." You're stuck with these freaking giant gas guzzling cars, and they're killing you. And everybody remembers that and remembered it for a very long time. And then they passed the CAFE standards to raise the mileage requirements to 35 miles a gallon. So the whole industry changed and shifted, causing a permanent loss of demand. And this cycle is already hitting the demand and causing a permanent loss of demand, and certainly not just in the US, but worldwide. So, you know, we're now, look at this, is insane. We are exporting 4.3 million barrels of petroleum product every single day. Every day we export 4.3 million barrels. So 4.35 times 7. No, is that really? Oh yeah, I guess it is. Shit. 30 million barrels a week we are exporting. That's like complete madness. So we make 19 million barrels for US consumption. We are sending 30 million out of the country, a day and a half's worth of our production. 20% of our weekly production of oil is not for us, it's for other countries. It's our refineries turning around and selling it to other countries. And meanwhile, we're exporting 30 million barrels a week. And what's happening? We're taking oil out of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. We took out 200 million barrels basically from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, and we're exporting 30 million a week. We're exporting 1.5 billion barrels. What is going on here? And this has gotten way worse. I've been pointing this out for ages. I've been pointing it out since last year, for more than last year, but this has gone insane. This is completely nuts. And nobody talks about it. Nobody does anything about it. This policy right here is one of the major causes of inflation, and it's not people aren't stopping, it's getting way, way worse. This is almost double what it was last year. You would not be paying what you're paying for gas and oil in this country if we weren't exporting 30 million frickin' barrels a week. That's madness. Anyway, Fed. Wow. I mean, that's a stunning number. Here it is. Oh, projections. I didn't know we had projections this week. Oh, I'm so happy. They don't always do projections. Oh, projections are my favorite. Committee decided to raise funds rate to 3 to. Whoa. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. What? Committee sees strategic maximum. Committee decided to raise the target range for the federal funds rate to 3 to 3.14%. Oh shit! They just raised it a full percentage. I think. Was it a 1? Is that considered a 1-point raise? Yeah. Wow. Yep. I guess it was. Holy shit! What did they just do? Telling you, this is no way. This is. I mean, look what you're doing to people who owe money. That's 75. No, okay, they're calling that 75. So I guess it was 2. I guess the range was 2.252 whatever, and now they're raising it to that. So then why are we reacting like this then? That's not that bad. I guess it's just the way they said it. But this is just exactly what was supposed to happen. That's kind of weird. So now let's read it. Let's see what it says. So recent indicators point to modest growth in spending and production. Job gains have been robust. Unemployment remains low. Inflation remains elevated. Supply and demand imbalances related to the pandemic, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Russia's war against Ukraine is causing tremendous human and economic hardship. The war and related events are creating additional upward pressure on inflation and are weighing on the global economic activity. Okay, so here's the thing. How does this do anything about that? What does raising our interest rate do to fix Russia's war against the Ukraine? It does nothing. It's bullshit. It's an excuse for what they're doing. The committee seeks to achieve maximum employment and inflation at the 2% rate over the long run in support of these goals. See, when they say that, what they really mean is they want to have as many people working as possible with a wage inflation rate of 2%. That's when they freak out. They could care less what price inflation is. It's when wage inflation is over 2% they freak out. So they raising in 3. Okay, so like I said, so it was 2.25, and I guess it was 2.25 to 2.5, and now it's 3 to 3.14. And they anticipate ongoing increases in the range will be appropriate. In addition, they continue to reduce their treasury holdings, which we know they are doing, as described in the plans for reducing the size of the sheet. That were issued in May. The committee is strongly committed to returning inflation to 2%. There's no way that 3% is enough to do it. They're going to have to be like 5%, 6% before this ends. And that's double where we are now, double. In assessing the appropriate stance, the committee will continue to monitor. The committee would be prepared to adjust the stance if it's appropriate, if risks emerge that could impede the attainment of the goals. What? So in other words, impede their goals are to suddenly bring inflation down to 2%. And as I said here, how are they going to do that? The CPI is the blue, okay? So here's the Fed going from, and inflation now is 10%, don't forget. So here's the Fed going from 5% to 12%. No, I'm sorry, yeah, more like 13, 14%. They go from 5% to almost, getting close to a triple, right? And here's inflation. It took, this is a long time. This is a year to 6 months to a year before it has any effect. Because they've already raised these rates massively. They're still going up inflation. Then it goes down, but like I said, they crashed the economy basically. They caused a massive recession here. And then they lowered the rates because they were all over the place because they got freaked out. They lowered the rates and tried to get out of the recession. Then as soon as the recession starts again, they start raising the rates. But inflation never came down to their 2% level, right? Not even close. They started raising rates again, getting it all the way down to the 2% level. But look how long the rates stayed up. It's like, here, you're at your freaking goal. Can we get a break? And they're like, no, 10%'s fine for a decade. It's okay. All right, so don't be fooled that this thing is going to end. It's not going to end. And the problem is they can't stop. The thing they want to stop most can't be stopped because it's wages, because everything about the economy is fake. Because wages, we underpay our people, just like the South went into a massive economic collapse when you ended slavery. Why? Because they had an unrealistic economy. Their economy was based on not paying their workers. They had a whole economy based on free labor, not free because they had to pay, and it wasn't free because you would pay good money for a slave. You paid cash for the guy. You just don't pay him a wage. You don't pay, once you buy him, you don't pay him, but you're paying for the guy, which is completely insane, right? It's like, I don't want to pay the person I'm hiring. I'll pay the guy who captured him and took him on a boat and dumped him at my doorstep. That's the guy I'm going to pay. But the actual person doing the work, no, he doesn't get anything. He gets nothing. That's And it took us like 1,000 years to outlaw it. That's the funny thing. It's like society is at slavery for how long? Not even 1,000, a couple of thousand years, right? Slavery always seemed like a good idea back in the day. So anyway, and there's a certain segment of the population that wants to bring it back. But it's a fake economy, right? And so we have a fake economy based on wage slavery. And like I said, you get out of college and you're $200,000 in debt. Now, why? Why do you have to go? Why do you need a college degree to get a job? You know, in Europe, not everybody goes to college. Because in Europe, they say they give you exams when you're 16 called O levels or A level. One's an O and one's A. Anyway, it's two sets of exams. But they give you exams when you're like 16 years old, and that determines whether you are smart enough to go to college. And if you're not smart enough to go to college, your high school effectively ends at 16, and you begin going to trade school to learn a craft. So they say, hey, you're not going to go to college. So would you like to be an auto mechanic, or would you like to be a nurse, or would you like to be something else? You're not going to be a doctor. So let's talk nursing. Let's talk reality. You're not going to be a rocket scientist, but would you like to be a car mechanic? You know, they start tracking people into something sensible and useful, and and when they're 18, they go out and get jobs. That's sensible. The jobs don't require a degree. They're like, the guy's like, you're a mechanic, you do not need a degree. You know, or you're a nurse, we will now put you into a nursing program and teach you nursing. You know, that's what we're going to do with you. But you know, there's no expectation that you have to have a college degree just to go do anything. So, and again, because of the way we structure things here, we create a ridiculous demand for college diplomas. Therefore, the supply of schools giving out diplomas cannot meet the demand, and therefore they get to raise their prices. All right, so they propagate the concept that if you don't have a college degree, you're worthless, and they tell the employers that, and the employers come out of their colleges, and everybody walks around saying everybody has to have a degree, and if you don't have a degree, what the hell's wrong with you? How come you didn't go to college? That's how we built our society now. Meanwhile, you're punishing people. But what are you doing though? Why? Why do we do this? Because when you come out of college, $200,000 in debt, and you have to go and buy yourself an apartment and put down a $5,000 deposit to get the apartment, and you have to buy $10,000 worth of furniture on the credit card, and you have to start paying your phone bill and your cable bill and your internet bill and your whatever the hell, and all this shit happens to you right out of college. What aren't you going to do? You're not going to start your own business. You're not going to go travel and see the world. You're not going to develop an alternative lifestyle like those hippies in the 60s, right? That's what we did. We put a stop to all that. Because what you're doing is creating wage slavery. People are in debt the minute they get out of college, and they can't survive without having a job and getting on the treadmill and working for the rest of their life. And there will be, then when they go to buy a house, and like I said, when they have kids, it's another, again, if you don't pay for your kids' college, you're still spending $20,000 a year. Then they go to college. So either they're going to be more in debt, either you'll be more in debt or they're in debt, one of the two. But that cycle never breaks. There's no choice. These kids can't live without getting a job and working, and that's what they want. They don't want people to have alternatives to getting a job and working. They want to make sure every single worker is motivated by the threat of not being able to survive. Therefore, that's the whip they get to crack over all the workers. You can't beat them anymore, but you can threaten their livelihood and tell them you'll fire them if they don't do this or that. And then you can pay them less money because they desperately need the jobs. And the Fed backs up this system 100%. Anyway, so back on this. All right, so economic projections, blah, 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 economic projections, blah, 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 blah. Okay, this could be ugly too. How are we doing? How's the market doing? Yep, yeah, it's you know, we're basically retesting the lows from yesterday, and now we'll see what we can build off of that. Look at the dollar. I think see another big pop in the dollar. Oil, not good. Wow, look at the VIX popped to 30. Holy shit, that's gonna be crazy. All right, so change in real GDP. Ooh, look what happened here. 0.2 for this year, 1.2 next year. It was, and that's down from 1.7 in December. So they were projecting 1.7, now projecting 1.2. It's down across the board, but this year severely down. Unemployment, look at the Fed. They're like, oh, we're hoping to get unemployment up to 4.3, something like that. That's good. We're happy. PCE, and again, this is fantasy land. They think it's going to suddenly go away in 1 year, or even though historically that's bullshit. It never does that. It can't happen. And again, the key thing here is that the underlying problem. I keep getting distracted because I get so pissed about all this. The underlying problem is that we underpay the workers, and until we pay the workers a reasonable amount of money, which we are miles away from, then it's not going to stop. Once you get to a point where we figure out how much Starbucks should really charge for a cup of coffee, which, like I said, 15 cents more will do it. But once Starbucks says, okay, we got to charge 15 cents, oh, hang on a second, what the hell? Next door, I don't think it's going to help much. Where are we? Oh, yeah. So, once you get to the equilibrium point where Starbucks says, okay, this is what we can charge for a cup of coffee, this is what people accept, this is what we can pay our workers, that's acceptable too, then everything goes back to normal for another decade or so. But we have gone through, because of the 2008 crash, and then we went from the 2008 crash and then just as we're coming out of that, which is 10 more years, we're coming out of that, and now we hit COVID and have that issue. We've never really addressed the issue. And because we've put off addressing the issue for so long, it's miles away from reality. But the problem is corporate profits are based on this unrealistic situation where we underpay the workers. So they're based on we underpay the workers and we borrow money for free. All right, so this is my company, Starbucks. I make $3 billion a year, but I make my $3 billion a year because I pay my workers not enough money to live, and I borrow money for free. And that's why I make $3 billion a year. If I borrowed money at 5%, I would make $2 billion a year. If I pay my workers a reasonable wage, I would make zero. So my entire profit is based on that. Now, you can pay your workers more and do this by just raising the price of coffee. How much? Well, Starbucks has $3 billion, $30 billion in sales. So if they, in other words, if they pay their workers a reasonable wage, cost them a couple of $1 billion. If they pay a reasonable rate of interest, cost them $1 billion. Now they have zero. But very simply, obviously, now that that's zero, you raise your price 10% and everything's fixed. So let's say, and again, these are just rough numbers, but let's say, so now your $5 cup of coffee is $5.50 instead of $5. That's the change. So you have to pay 50 cents more per cup. But like I said, when you look at the reality of it, you'll get a raise too. You know how that works, right? You work in an office and they raise the secretary salary to $35,000 and you're a sales associate making $35,000. You know that you go to your boss, and all the associates go to the boss, so you pay your freaking secretary $35,000. Why can't we should get at least $45,000? That's how it works. Everybody gets a raise when you raise the people at the bottom, because that trickles up. Not only that though, but the person who was making $30,000 at Starbucks is now making $45,000 at Starbucks. They can afford a $5.50 cup of coffee, and they can also afford whatever bullshit you're selling them. They can afford my newsletter. They can afford, you know, your widgets, whatever you sell people, you know, or get a haircut at your hair salon for 25 instead of 20. You know, whatever it is you're selling, they can afford, because they're making 50% more money. And if they can afford it and they can spend it, then you'll get more money and more customers and so on and so forth. Instead of people, you know, literally, I see this with these young people. They go home and they curl up with their phone. And they don't do it just because the phone is some bad thing that sucks up their attention and so on and so forth. They do it because they don't have any money. They barely have enough money to pay the rent, and they come home and they make macaroni and cheese, and they play on their phones, and they talk on their phones, and they get together on their phones with their friends, because they can't afford to go out and do this stuff and drink and so on and so forth and go to restaurants. And then the restaurants complain, why do we have no money? It's, you know, it's because they're paying the guys in the back $5 an hour, $10 an hour. That's why the restaurant has no money. They're not creating a customer base. And it's not, obviously not just them, it's every restaurant, it's every retailer, it's everybody who's employing all these low-wage people and not paying them enough. They're taking a base of 20, 30, 40 million people, and they're not giving them enough money to spend. And that's not going to get fixed by raising rates. That doesn't help at all. And the money that we have spent has been wasted because we didn't do anything to improve that situation. And you can see from the Fed, no, you would think with 10% inflation we'd have better GDP growth than that, right? We're flatlining. You know, and everything's getting ratcheted down. Core PCE is prices. Everything but inflation is getting ratcheted down. Long-term inflation is higher. And again, but this is, like I said, fantasy land. Oh, that's painful. Fed funds rate 4.4, 3.4, 4.4. That's 2022. We're in 2022. And they just raised it to 3. 4.4, and we have 3 meetings left, is half a point per meeting. Are there 3 meetings left or 2? I think there might be 2. October, November, December. Can't be 3 meetings left. That'd be 2. So in 2 meetings, that's two more 7.5% hikes. That's not good. Next year, 4.6. Well, at least they kind of plan to calm down. But this is unrealistic. Again, this is unrealistic because this is reality. This is what it takes to fight inflation, not this. That's what they're planning. This is their plan to fight inflation. They're like, we're going to raise rates, and this is what they did. We're going to raise, except it wasn't there for some long period of time, so it doesn't seem like the same thing. They're like, we're going to raise rates from here to here, and we expect this to happen. But we're here. We're not there. We're here. This is the rate of inflation. And this took this to take, you know, this to stop it, not freaking this. Okay, here, look, they did this. Here's this. That didn't stop it at all, did it? So this is kind of crazy. Oh no. It's garbage, PCE. Oh, I see, PCE. So look, actual PCE inflation. So 2020, then of course they dumped trillions of dollars into the economy, right? So here's your 5.5. What are they doing to remove the money they put in? They put $11 trillion into the economy. What are they doing to remove it? Nothing. You know, it slows it, you know, raising the rate slows the money, but it doesn't take it away. And they're, you know, they're reducing their own balance sheet. That's going to take money out of circulation, but they're doing it at such a slow pace that it's not going to have much of an effect. All they're doing right now is they're slowing down their additional borrowing, and that means they're letting the things that they have, like notes, they let them expire. So when the Fed instead of rolling over their notes, when a note comes due, they're collecting the money and closing the note out. So then money is taken out of circulation to close the note, goes back on the Fed balance sheet and lowers their own balance. And that takes forever though. It's going to take years and years and years, because they're not actively selling the notes, and they can't, because they'd be competing against the government who's trying to sell notes too. So they can't really do that. But what they're doing is not buying more notes. And I mean, as their notes expire, money comes out of circulation. But that's going to take forever, and that only accounts for $5 trillion of all the money that was put into circulation. So that's going to be too little, too late, really. Wow. So look at the median. So we're at 5.5. Upper end of central tendency. These are so underestimated, I think. And then they think it's going to go back. It's going to just magically chop in half next year. Man, it's insane. And it's got to be a concern. You know, you've got rate policies that are being run by people who have no realistic expectations at all of what's happening, and obviously haven't paid any attention to history. And this is just like kicking the football, you know, kicking the ball down the field. Yeah, see, that's Tom saying no change to the 75 and likely 4.6 by Christmas. And the thing is, that's much higher than people thought. We were talking 3.5 to 4% next year, and now we're at 3, and they're saying 4+% by the end of this year. They're saying 4.5%. So 1.5% in the next 2 meetings. I'm pretty sure that is right. So what do we say? Yeah, 2 meetings. So 2 more 0.75% hikes, and that's what the change is that's killing the market right now. 2 more 0.75. This one was bad enough. They didn't want 7.5. Now he's saying, oh, no. This is the first one. 2 more 0.75s. Merry Christmas. But again, you know, as I said, though, it's not that bad. After all this, I'm telling you, it's not that bad. This is just, you know, we've survived this before. It's been done. So these lows, which we're bouncing off nicely, these lows, which are basically coming back to where we were yesterday, are still, this is as bad as it probably gets. And we will survive. So it's no reason not to buy things. It's no reason not to buy long-term investments. Will we tip into a recession? Will things get worse? Yeah, it's a good reason to keep your hedges on also. And we've got a lot of cash, and we didn't spend much of it in the last portfolio review. We improved some positions. We have not added any positions pretty much all month. I mean, we barely added a thing for the last 30 days. We were waiting for this to see how it gets resolved. But even so, now we're into this is the end of September. We got October, November, December. I'm certainly going to wait until we see earnings to see how this is playing through. And again, keep in mind how unrealistic these earnings are. Because the fact of the matter is, you are not going to be able to keep paying workers this little. So you got to think about, when the companies we invest in, like Starbucks, we wouldn't put any money into right now. You got to think about the fact is, what's going to happen if you pay your workers the proper amount of money? What happens to Walmart? So WMT. Okay, so Walmart. What? That's not Walmart. As soon as I see the numbers, I'm like, that is not Walmart. There we go. Okay. So Walmart, $600 billion in sales. They only make $16 billion frickin' dollars. 4%. Or is that growth of profit? Hang on a second. Whatever it is, it's not much, right? So it's 16 divided by 600. No, 2.6. They make 2.6% drop to the bottom line. They've got 2 million workers. 2 million workers make no money. Whatever the least they can possibly pay them, that's what they pay them. So let's say those 2 million workers get a $5 raise. That their wages go from $10 an hour on the average in the United States to $15 an hour, and that will happen. Because these people are starting to understand that they need to vote to get this stuff done. And if it takes the entire Republican Party being voted out of office, that's what's going to happen over the next couple of years, because that's what happened to them last time. That people got fed up, and economically they realized that there was never going to be any help from the Republicans as far as wages. And when you get those people off the couch and you get those people to go to the voting booth and stand in line and wait or do whatever it takes to vote these days, because it's restrictive in a lot of places, they're going to do it. And so 2 million Walmart workers is just the start. And right now they all wear MAGA hats, but that's not going to continue if they continue to be losing ground to inflation, right? So you got 2 million workers there times $5 an hour times 40 hours a week times 52 weeks. $20 billion. You're like, so here's Walmart lobbying to Congress saying we can't pay $15 an hour. We don't even make $20 billion. But that's not the case. All they have to do is raise this number 5%, and that's $30 billion. So everything in Walmart would have to be 5% more expensive for them to pay their workers 50% more money. Is that a fair trade? Do things in Walmart have to be that cheap? Do they have to be, you know, and it's the same thing with the dollar store, it's the same thing with the grocery store, same thing with everything. We, the consumer, have to say, you know what? I don't need to buy everything expensive. I don't need to buy this much stuff. We need to realistically cut down on our spending 5%. If you can't afford the 5% price increase, buy 5% less stuff. But you know what? Isn't it reasonable to ask you to cut back 5% or to pay 5% more in order for 40 million people to go from living a life where they can barely survive to living like a decent life where they can actually, you know, do normal things and have activities and save and God forbid enjoy themselves and go on vacation and whatever, and have that kid that they can now afford, instead of raising the child in poverty, have a kid that they can actually take care of properly? Do they not deserve that? 5%. This is a problem, because you know, when Walmart sits down with their lobbyists in Congress, they say there's no way we can pay $20 billion. We only make $16 billion. But it's like, yeah, you only make $16 billion because you only charge $600 billion for your stuff. Why not charge $620 billion? And they're like, oh, people won't pay it. Of course they'll pay it if everybody does it. If you have a law, this is why you have a law, right? When you have a law that says the mandatory minimum wage is now $15, then Walmart doesn't have to worry about whether Target is paying their workers less, or Costco or anybody else. And Costco, frankly, pays more. There's the thing about Costco. Costco pays their workers much more than everybody else, like $20 an hour. Costco's a great freaking place to work. And Costco doesn't have to worry about rising prices. So therefore, Costco, see, I think that's one of the things you have to look at. Like, hey, like Costco pays their workers very fairly. So when wages rise, Costco won't have as much pressure to raise their wages. Even if they do raise them $5, it's only for Costco a 25% increase in their wages from 20 to 25. Even if they, just because if you assume they're going to go along and raise $5 with everybody else, but Costco will be paying 25% more, other companies paying 50% more to their workers. Big difference. But this is why you have a federal minimum wage and make it a law. Because if you make it a law, then everybody's playing on the same field. And everybody will adjust their prices accordingly. And it'll work out. And it'll work out, like I said, this is what working out means. 5% more at Walmart. You might pay 10% more for your dinner at a restaurant because they got to pay now. The busboy's got to get $15, and the kitchen guy's got to get $15. You know, and this has been Chipotle's problem because they had so many illegal people working in Chipotle's. They had a big problem, and they had to change over their labor force. That really impacted them because they were getting away with some ridiculously free labor from these people. But it seems like a devastating amount of money until you realize that this is nothing, that this is already $600 billion. And you're talking about going from 600 to 620. So 20 divided by 600, well, we said that already, it's 3.3% anyway. It's not 5%, it's 3.3%. So your $1.50 tube of toothpaste will cost you $1.65. Wait, 3% of $1.50? No, it's not even that much. I'm sorry, it's $1. It'd be $1.53. No, I'm sorry, $1.54. It'd be $1.54, $1.55. That's how much more it would be. So instead of $1.50 for toothpaste, $1.55. Okay, we're benefiting, of course. These low prices benefit us, and you raise those workers, and we don't get the $1.52 for toothpaste. We have to pay $1.55. And obviously that impact will go across a lot of things. Bottom line, it's 5%. That's what it is. It's 5%, and you can call it a tax, you can call it a price increase, you can call it whatever you want, but that's the cost of fixing the wage problem for 40 million people in America. And we're not willing to do that? You know, and they do that in Europe. That is effectively what they do. People who work at people working anywhere make enough money to live in Europe. And not only that, but the government then takes care of a lot of your basics like healthcare and stuff. So people in Europe have the poorer people in Europe have a much better situation. The richer people pay more taxes, and everybody pays a bit more money for a hamburger and whatever that they're buying. But that's fine. That's fair. That's equitable. It's called socialism. It's called socialism. It's a thing. Anyway, so I got to wrap this up. So that's what we've got to look at carefully. Is we got to start thinking about when we're looking at our companies and any new companies you want to invest in. We have to accept the reality that other investors are not willing to accept that this is not going to go away quickly, that this is going to be a long-term trend, and you've got to be realistic about how this is going to get impacted. The problem is this will happen. You will pay 3% more in Walmart for your stuff, and they will pay their workers a reasonable wage. And the world is going to be a way better place because you have 40 million people who are going to have their lifestyle raised 50%, and they're going to spend more money, and the prosperity that trickles up. They're going to put more money into the economy. That money is going to circulate, and so on and so forth. And it'll ultimately be good for us, and that builds a better foundation than what we're doing the other way. But the problem is because we're not doing it as a clear policy, we're not setting that minimum wage and mandating it. Right, you know, that's what we should be doing right now. We should be saying $15 minimum wage in 2 years. And what's 2 years? 2024. So 2024, $15 minimum wage, and by 2030, $22. And you scale it up on a regular basis. Say that's it. We're moving up to $22 an hour. Everybody's going to make that kind of money. But you force it on people, and everybody has to adjust. And you set a minimum wage scale like every 6 months between now and 2020. You set the minimum wage up. And I'm sorry, Alabama, where the minimum wage is still $7, and there's a bunch of states like that. But they've got to jump in line. And maybe I would even put in an aid package to offset some of those increases for companies and so on and so forth to help people out. But it still has to be done. There'll be an adjustment period. Profits will go down because first they're going to take a hit on profit, then they've got to pass along the cost, then the consumers have to adjust to the cost. Nobody, this is a fear all these people have. Walmart's like, if I raise my prices 3.3%, then 8% of my people are going to go to Target, and we're going to have this much revenue drop, blah, 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 and the 3.3% thing will be completely offset, and we won't have the money, and then we'll be back to making not enough money and not paying the workers. Adjustment period. That's why it takes so long. That's why this happens. There is a long adjustment period where wages go up, prices go up, wages go up, prices go up. You can't stop it by raising rates. We proved that already. These guys are playing in this ballpark. This is not even on the field for this. And inflation is here now. They're pretending it's here and that these little adjustments are going to make a difference. That's not the case. We're here and we haven't even addressed the wage issue yet. And we have to address it. It's below people, the bottom 40 million people, and we're talking like 160 million wage earners. Okay, so there's 160 million wage earners. So the bottom 25% basically of the wage earners are making $10 an hour on the average. Completely unacceptable. And so we all have to pay 3.3% more so that they can have a realistic, have a realistic amount. Instead of making $30,000 a year, they should make $45,000 a year, basically. Well, that's not even the number. I'm sorry, because at $10 an hour, it's much less. 10 times 40 times 52. They only make $20,000. Come on, people. We're paying people $20,000. We're paying 40 million people $20,000 a year to live. That's it. Pre-tax. 40 million people have to get by on $20,000. How is it not slavery? How are they better off? When you had a slave, you had to, okay, right away, when you have a slave, you have to provide them shelter. You have to provide them clothing. You have to provide them health care, although probably if they got really sick, they would just shoot them. It's like a lame horse. It's like, what's the point? But you have to provide, they don't provide education, they didn't do that for the slaves. They provide shelter, food. Oh yeah, food, forgot about food. Shelter, food, clothing, and some degree of health care. That's what you give a slave. You can't afford that on $20,000. Certainly not if you have a family. If you by yourself, maybe could squeeze by on $20,000. All right, my daughter is sharing an apartment with 5 people. It's in Hoboken. Hoboken's expensive, but she has 5 roommates. They're paying $1,100 each. It's a $5,500 a month apartment in Hoboken. It's a nice apartment because it fits 5 people, but you can't do much better. No, $1,100 a month is a decent rent in Hoboken, but that's $1,100 a month squeezed in with 5 people. They all have single beds. There's no room for double beds or anything like that. So it's 5 people. That right there in 12 months is what, $13,000 worth of rent. After taxes paid, now you got to pay $13,000 for rent. Then there's utilities, a couple $100, the utilities, whatever it is, $50 each or whatever, cable, internet, blah, blah, blah. Then they've got to eat and etc. So again, $20,800, you can go home and you can eat. You can go home, make dinner, and look at your phone. That's all you can afford to do. That's all that's left. There is nothing else, and you just work 40 hours for it. How is that different than being a slave? Because you're free to do what? And if that person has $200,000 worth of debt from going to college, and it just didn't work out for them, they couldn't get a good job. Maybe they were like many millions of people who go to college. Maybe they were unqualified, but went to college anyway because you kind of had to, and their parents pushed them because you don't want your kid not to go to college, and there's a stigma if your kids don't go to college. So maybe it was an ill thought out plan to go to college and borrow money to have student loans and so on and so forth. And they're all stuck in that. And that's why this whole student loan thing is such a big deal for everybody, because this is the case for so many people. They're stuck with this crushing debt, and they're never going to get out of it. The rest of their lives, they will probably never get out of this burden. You know, maybe they'll pay off the student loan, but then there'll be some other loan, and the housing loan, or you get sick, God forbid, and then you stay, and then you got those loans, medical bills, and so on and so forth that don't go away. So again, this is not sustainable. Just like slavery wasn't sustainable. At some point, they get pissed off enough to do something about it. And you're not going to stop this by raising rates. That's not going to fix this problem. It's not going to go away. You're going to have to pay the extra money, and everything's got to adjust. But that adjustment is very painful and sporadic and takes a long time to go through the system. All right, so from that, we now that we have the Fed under our wheels and we can move forward and we know what they're going to do now, we can start. Oh, look at this. Okay, I guess people have already started. We can start finding things to buy that are realistic expectations for next year and the year after that. Okay, so, you know, and again, like I said, it's not worse than we expected. It's exactly where we were. Well, it is worse than we expected, but how much worse could the sentiment be? So this is kind of fun. Oh, look at silver. Whoa, hi-ho. Silver flying. The dollar. Oh, the dollar went. What is that about? Oh, it must be what Powell's saying. Oh, yeah, we're not paying any attention to Powell's speech. Silly me. So obviously Powell's saying something that's better than what they said here. He must have said something. 4.25%. Stock slide Fed decision, then shoot higher. All right, let's see if you can explain this. The Fed approved its third interest rate hike, signaled additional large increases likely, combats inflation. Major U.S. averages retreated, then flipped higher at the start of Powell's press conference. What on earth could he have said? Shorter term Treasury. Okay, is anyone, okay. Stock averages, session highs, post-decision, blah, blah, blah. At some point, as the stance of policy tightens further, it will be appropriate to slow the rate. So all you have to do is say this. At some point, as the stance of policy tightens further, it will become appropriate to slow their pace of rate hikes. Well, of course. Well, accumulated decisions. Oh my God. Yes, and the sky is blue and water is wet. Wow. I'm telling you guys, this is insane. Seriously, that's all it takes to get people back on board? It's like eventually we'll stop. Oh, yay. Oh my God, people, this is just crazy. Anyway, all right, so whatever. Look at this. All right. So as I said this morning, as I've been saying all week, it's like, we knew this is gonna happen. Maybe there's not much Powell could say to make it worse, and it didn't really get worse because it sank back to yesterday's lows. Now he says one little nice thing. It is, it's like you're an abused child, right? It's like, you know, he's constantly beating you, and then one time gives a little pat on the head. You're like, oh, he's so great. Thank you, sir. So that's where we are anyway. So all right, that's fine. We're fine. Everything's fine. Just because he said it will eventually end. And again, we don't think the market's going to go this much higher. We think 4,000 is the correct place for the S&P to be. We think 12,000 is the correct place for the NASDAQ to be. You know, we think 12.5 actually, 12.5 on the NASDAQ. But this is fine. And we can invest, but we have to invest in things that make sense, and we have to take in the reality of what's going to be a rough few years ahead as we adjust to this new reality. We have to start paying our workers fairly. We have to adjust our expectations. Companies have to borrow reasonable amounts of money and expand at a reasonable pace, and not look to this constant growth at any cost sort of thing that we've been doing for the last 20 years. You know, and think about that with Walmart, right? Who doesn't have a Walmart? How much more can they possibly grow? They are 10% of all retail. $600 billion is 10% of our $6 trillion retail. It's actually like 7 trillion now because of inflation. And I pointed that out the other day too, that we were at $6 trillion of retail. We're still at $6 trillion of goods. You know, it's the same amount of goods is being sold, the same quantity of goods is being sold, but now we're just paying $1 trillion more for them. So retail sales haven't grown. The price of retail sales has grown. That's where we stand. And it's going to be adjustment after adjustment after adjustment until we get back to a sort of a equilibrium that makes sense for everybody. And we're not there, and we're nowhere near there, and it's going to take a long time. All right, but this is fine. Ooh, look at gold too. Gold's making a nice snap up. Interesting. It's funny how the dollar, because all he said was that we're going to stop at some point, and the dollar drops from 11.5. Wow, 11.5. That's painful. Dollar drops from 11.5 back under 111. So anyway, what a crazy crap. But like I said, we haven't been buying all month. We've been very cautious. Now we know where we stand. Now we can start looking for the right kind of companies that will not be so affected by rising wages, and will be able to pass along these very small, like I said, everybody freaks out. It's a lot. If you raise wages 10%, that doesn't mean that you raise prices 10%. Wages are only a component of what the price of something is. So giving the workers more money isn't the end of the world that we treat it like. And we got to keep that in perspective, because it needs to be done. It's an important thing that has to happen. Wow, look at the VIX too. The VIX popped to 30 and back to 25. Should have been selling some puts right there. Anyhow, all right. Thanks for listening, everybody. I appreciate it. And we'll do this again next week, probably with some picks. We'll probably have some more stuff to talk about. All right, take care, everybody. Thanks.